Whew. I don't know why I agreed to do this. This sucks. All right, so we're just gonna jump right in. And I think the way that I want to do this is by having one video be a debrief slash like looking forward to the next week, and one video being a progress report of sorts. So just kind of how the runs are going and how the week is going. That being said, this would be the debrief for the end of February and looking forward to the start of March. This week was a lot. It was a lot of running, and if I wasn't running, I was walking. Now, luckily, I have an amazing wife who agreed to do the walks with me, and so we got to do some just goofy things as far as getting shots like this, or if anyone's familiar with the Wes Anderson trend, like we pretended. We basically made fun of it and got shots like the one that you guys just saw of us walking like we were in a Wes Anderson film. Cue the piano music or whatever you play behind it. But the runs themselves were not terrible. I will say we started the week really down as far as motivation, but ended the week on a bit of a high. I think if the biggest things, the number one takeaway is we can do hard things. Running is hard, and I don't really enjoy it. Not yet, but we can do it. The first two runs were for distance intervals, and so they were broken down into a pattern basically of run this distance, then walk for a certain amount of time. So whether that was 0.3 miles and then walk, and doing that 5 times or 6 times or however many. That was kind of the first two runs. I found, at least for myself, when I have a distance goal, I run into the pace problem where I'm just like, I need to get this done as soon as possible, which leads to the burnout and leads to the, if it's doing that 4 times, then I do it once and I feel great, and then I do it twice and I feel terrible, and then I do it 3 times and 4 times and I'm like, man, I hate this. The distances were roughly like 1.8 miles for the first run. I think about 2.2 miles for the second run. I know the plan wants it to be a little bit higher, but I just wasn't really feeling great, which leads me to my first big takeaway of the week. I need to be drinking more water. I am someone who runs chronically dehydrated. My wife joked that I'm like a cactus plant in the desert. Like, I can drink a cup of water once and be fine for a month. Realistically, especially being more active, I need to be drinking so much water. Like this week, I felt like I was just downing water like crazy. It was honestly just, I say an annoyance because I'm not used to carrying around a water bottle, having to consciously think of that. The second thing is I need to stretch before and probably after the runs way better than I have been. If anyone's gone through PE or like any sort of sport, it's like, all right, touch your toes, now go to the right, go to the left, hamstring, quad stretch, you're good, go run. But actually getting intentional, if that's the right word, about it, doing stretches that are actually going to help my ankles or my knees or my open up the hips and all that fun stuff. And so that was kind of what I dug into a little bit towards the week as I started to have some aches and pains. Not bad, but just kind of like ooh, that doesn't feel right. And then stretching it and it felt significantly better. So just honestly being on top of that was huge. Which leads me, if anyone's being like, well, you talked about 2 runs, what about the third one? Good question. The third run was actually really good. It wasn't a distance run per se, it was a timed run. So the intervals weren't run for this distance and then walk. It was run for this amount of time, then walk, then run for this amount of time. So it was 4 sets of running for 6 minutes and then walking for, I think it was 2. And that was actually really, I'm not going to say easy, but it was really doable. I think during the first 2 sets, it was the mentality of like, okay, I can do this. And even looking at my watch, like when I see 0.5 miles left, I have no gauge for that. It's just like, all right, we're just gonna put my head down and go. Versus if I see 3 minutes, I'm like, okay, I can do anything for 3 minutes. But like, heck, I'll do karaoke for I'm not gonna do karaoke for 3 minutes. I don't do karaoke, but I will do a lot of things for 3 minutes. No problem. I think that was a bit of a mental, like I can push myself with a very tangible end that made it really, again, not easy, but doable. That and just the encouragement of a lot of people, and even some of the comments from last video of just like, hey, you can do hard things, and like it's rewarding when you do the hard things. The first and second interval were super easy. The third and fourth sets, though, were actually kind of tough. Full disclosure, I cut the fourth one short, not necessarily because I couldn't do it, but just because of time. Like, we had places to be and things to do. I guess that leads me to my third takeaway for the week, which is I need to wake up earlier and get my runs done in the morning versus trying to squeeze them in the afternoon or evening. But we were able to do it, and Saturday's run was the longest run that I've been able to do and feel good afterwards. The total distance for the Saturday run was 2.6 miles, and I felt great. Like, there was no like, oh, I feel like death, my legs hurt. Like, I was actually more sore from lifting with my brother than I was from running, which is a huge thing for me. Speaking of which, Skylar, if you are watching this, never ever say, oh, we'll go light today, and then just proceed to demolish weight. Like, that was ridiculous. I am still sore, and it's like been 3 days. It sucks, but it was a really fun week. I think just generally being active leads to a lot of that, like, oh, I feel really good. I think if nothing else, like, those are some really big takeaways, or really fun takeaways. Looking forward to next week, the 3 runs that I have on the schedule are really big around pace, and so the distances are a little bit shorter because it's more about managing pace than trying to hit a certain distance. I think that'll be really good, especially given that 2-3 weeks ago I couldn't run more than a mile or 2 miles, and now with the intervals and going off on, like 2.6 is the furthest I've ever run recently. It was a really good, encouraging thing to be able to hit that and be like, feel good. It was kind of like okay, if I could hit that, how much further can I run? Which, for any of you guys who are running, you probably know what that feeling's like. And you're right, it was a really good feeling. To cut my rambling off a little bit, setting the pace for next week, I want to try to stay within that 12-minute mile pace. I know that I can do it. It's just a matter of staying consistent in there and being able to do it through the entire run versus starting really strong and then ending really weak. I think my next stepping stone, which it feels really weird to say, would be running with other people. I have a lot of friends who run with groups, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to add one to their numbers. I think the personal goal for myself is to be able to run like a mile, maybe 2 miles without stopping before going. But I think that's more pride speaking, because I don't want to be the guy who's like, oh yeah, let's run, guys, and they all take off and I'm like but hey, that's neither here nor there. We'll burn that bridge when we get there. Biggest thing for right now is we're making progress, and at the end of the day, progress is progress, and I can't be mad at that. So I appreciate you guys for hanging out and listening to me ramble on about my running. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much for hanging in there, and I will see you next time. Thanks, guys.